So it is All Hallows Eve. Happy Halloween to you out there. And in honor of the occasion, I thought it would be fitting if I read and reviewed a bona fide horror classic, that being The Great God Pan by Arthur Machen. Now, this is a seminal and very highly regarded horror novella, which I am honestly kind of surprised I had not read until now. But let's get into it. What is the story of The Great God Pan? So it opens with some dudes, and I struggle to recall the name of even a single character from this book because the characters in this book are nothing more than names. But it opens with a couple of dudes, one of whom is like some scientist guy who is about to perform some ungodly experiment on this poor young woman in order to facilitate her being able to, I guess, what you would call see beyond the veil, so to speak. He's going to do some kind of unspecified procedure on her brain in order to enable her to commune with the forces behind the perceivable world, so to speak. So he does, and the poor girl is rendered basically just a total invalid, just mentally destroyed, basically. And then the story jumps, and this book moves at like a mile a minute. It jumps forward in time, and we get an anecdote regarding this kind of mysterious young girl who is kind of odd and is perhaps consorting with some otherworldly powers. Some spooky shit go down. Then we jump forward again with some new characters, and there's a rash of suicides that are taking place in this neighborhood of London, all of which are connected by this woman of many aliases. And eventually, our main characters, whose names I, again, can scarcely even recall, decide that this woman is into some diabolical shit. And so they eventually figure out that she must be somehow causing the deaths of all these men. And there's also some kind of implied sexual stuff in the background. This book was kind of scandalous at the time it came out because there's kind of some implications to it. And this was kind of like Victorian era literature, which kind of flaunted some cultural taboos somewhat. But anyway, so our main characters, if they can be called that, decide that they're going to go to this mysterious woman and basically coerce her into committing suicide and killing herself. Long story short, she does, but then some seriously freaky shit go down. Her body morphs into just ghastly forms, and she eventually melts into goo. And then it's revealed at the very end that this mysterious woman was actually the daughter of the girl who got experimented on in the beginning of the story and who was apparently impregnated supernaturally by some kind of paranormal power, which is implied, I guess, to be the great god Pan. And so that's the story. That is the story of the great god Pan. This shit was wild, and it was very much ahead of its time. So to talk about the technical qualities of it, let's start out with the writing. Arthur Machen could write, and it is a very good thing that he was as talented as he was, because if he had not been, this book would have been of much lower quality because he already foregoes a lot in favor of a very, very rapid pace. That if it had not been as skillfully written as it was, it had the potential to be a much clumsier and more inept story. But thankfully, on a prose level, The Great God Pan is actually a delight. There are some really good turns of phrase in here. The sentences flow very nicely. Arthur Machen could write, and this is the first thing I've ever read by Arthur Machen. This particular book contains what are, I guess, his two most prominent works. It's an omnibus containing the great god Pan and the Hill of Dreams. But it is apparent that he was a skilled wordsmith, and so I can commend it for the writing. But now let's get on to the characters and let's talk about exactly what he forewent when it came to writing this story. And that is character, because the characters in this book are among the thinnest I have ever encountered in any book ever. And that is partly because this book moves so rapidly and covers so much ground in such a short page count. There is nothing here in terms of like psychological depth or like real characterization. The characters are just names, and that is evinced by the fact that I can scarcely recall the name of one of them. One guy's name was Clark. That's about all I can remember, honestly. Characters suck. So major points get knocked for the characters. But now let's talk about the actual story and why this book was quite ahead of its time. So first of all, just in terms of like how this story is told, this thing cooks. Like it covers so much time in its own. I mean, it's barely even a novella. Like this could be categorized as some kind of like just extended short story, but like it covers so much ground so quickly. It can be a little hectic at times, and because each section of the story kind of deals almost with new characters, it gets kind of confusing, or can be, to keep up with like what's happening, how does all of this relate, and you don't really know exactly how all of it shakes out until like the very end. But it is a very riveting story nonetheless, and that is because that this prefigured much literature that was to come. And I am referring specifically to the work of H.P. Lovecraft. This was Lovecraft before Lovecraft. The Great God Pan is an early example of cosmic horror. Uh, there's not a whole lot that is shown. Most of the deaths and everything, all the like gnarly stuff, takes place largely off page. It's just kind of relayed secondhand. But the subject matter, the kind of like mystical, otherworldly tone, and kind of the themes of the outer world like breaking through into like our reality, right? That's just like straight up Lovecraftian. And like I said, this book was also kind of scandalous, I believe, when it was initially published, because it was published in a pretty straight-laced era. And like I say, even though nothing is like explicitly depicted, I guess it wouldn't have been published if it had gone that route. But there's still some like sexual implications and kind of stuff that would you might say would um, rub propriety the wrong way, perhaps. And so this kind of caused a bit of a stir when it came out. But it is a very visionary work that really prefigures a lot of literature that would come later, basically, again, Lovecraft. And it really is kind of a trailblazer for that. This is a very, very influential work, and overall I quite liked it. So I guess to get down to rating The Great God Pan, how would I rate this? uh, I think I would give The Great God Pan a B minus. The writing is really good. It's very lush at times. Machen was a good wordsmith, as I said. The characters are atrociously thin. But the story, even though it moves at a blistering pace, uh, it is so forward thinking and so engaging, because it really does pull you in. Again, even though it's kind of hard to follow exactly what's happening and how it all relates at points, you're still sucked in because of just how ominous things feel, of how like there's some seriously spooky shit going down in the, kind of off in the wings, and you know something is bound to bound to go down, right? So it really does captivate you, I think, or at least it did me. So I'm thinking a B minus would be a pretty good rating that I could give it, a pretty fair rating. If I had written this, I don't think I would have written this in quite such a short format. I think this story could have been improved quite a bit with a little bit uh, uh, greater length and not such hectic, just balls to the wall pacing, and with definitely a whole lot more character depth than it has. But for what it is again just a seminal work and a very influential and visionary work of horror fiction, which still kind of like hangs over a good portion of the genre. And once you read this, its influence will be more palpable, I think. So yeah, B minus for me. So The Great God Pan. Have you read the book? If you have, let me know down in the comments what you thought about it, whether you have agreed or disagreed with anything I've said here today. And if you haven't read The Great God Pan, I could recommend this. It's short. You can read it in one sitting. It is exciting, engaging, but it is also just so, again, forward thinking and visionary. And especially if you are a fan of H.P. Lovecraft, you definitely owe it to yourself to give this a go, because this is just in that same vein. This did that before that, really. So yeah, I could recommend it. And as always, if you have enjoyed anything you've seen or heard here today, remember to hit that like button and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. And until next time, peace.